And I think we're live. Yes, we are live. I'm here with my new friend Christian. How you doing, Christian?
I'm doing great, David. Thanks for having me
Well,
on
thanks
the
for
show.
thanks for taking the time. We met on Podmatch. I meet a lot of interesting people on Podmatch, so I'm interested to find out about you. And the way it works over here on my podcast is I ask the guest to just talk us through the whole journey from childhood up until today. So, what were you raised with in terms of faith, philosophy, ideas, practices, and how did that shape you? And how did you respond and react and rebel? And where did you end up? And just talk us through the whole thing, okay?
Yeah. Well, I was born in Cuba under Castro. So I was born, right during the revolution, the time of revolution, at a time where, it was actually dangerous to go to church
Uh,
because it was viewed as a threat to the control of the state. And I grew up in a very Catholic environment. My family was incredibly Catholic. I'm one of 9 kids, all conceived within 12 years.
mm,
And yes, and I'm really grateful for that because I saw in one of the ways in which I saw how much courage my parents had, because in spite of the danger that there was in going to church and practicing your beliefs, uh, every Sunday they would cart all of us to church. And so I went to all boy Jesuit high school once we came to the States, once we emigrated to the States. So I definitely come out of a very Catholic environment. And yet, in my case, David, what I came to, the choice that I had to make was the realization that that religion did not have room for me as a gay man.
ah,
And even though it was a very painful process because the Catholic worldview was the only thing that I knew that in order to be who I am, all of who I am, that I had to leave the confines, the limitations of the Catholic Church. So today I put myself in the spiritual, not religious category. I honor all religious paths. I've done a lot of studies about the different religions. I'm fed by different traditions and practices from different ones, both Eastern and indigenous and New Thought. So I kind of weave in um, what works for me and what matches my experience of God, what matches my experience of the divine. And so I honor all religions and all spiritual traditions, and I also challenge them because sometimes they get in the way of our relationship to God. And so, to the degree that a religion, a tradition, is supporting us to be the most that we can be, to deepen our connection with the sacred, then I think they're doing their job. And if we get caught in this, what I call the theological pissing contest, my religion is bigger than yours, my God is bigger than yours, um, then and to the degree that they're um, feeding separation and hatred and war, uh, to me, then the religions are not doing their job. They have been humanicized too much, a little bit. Um,
corrupted, yeah. So, without, I want to get into that. I want to get into all that interesting stuff. But first, I'm just wondering about the siblings. Like, are you close with them? Which way did they go? Catholic, New Age, like, or something else?
That's good.
And
That's a
and
really
and the
interesting.
parents are the parents. Forgive me if you mentioned, but are the parents both still alive, or what was their journey, roughly speaking? Just remained Catholic, like that's it.
They always remain Catholic,
Okay.
and but here's an interesting thing. My dad passed about 20 years ago. My mom passed just a year ago.
Okay.
Um, and you know what was interesting about that? Most of my siblings don't identify as Catholic. I think maybe
Okay.
two, maybe three still do. Yeah, I think it's three. Two more, two and three, two and a half,
Two and a
let's
half.
say.
Okay.
But here's another thing that I noticed that I had. I thought I had worked through all my Christianity stuff and come to a place that I can honor Christianity in the same way that I honor different traditions. But I have to tell you, David, that seeing my mom's going through the end of her life, what I think should have been a source of comfort, her religion, her beliefs, at least the way that she interpreted them, turned out to be a source of fear. And it brought up my stuff about Christianity again, to tell you the truth, in the expressions. And I know that it's not universally applied this way, that it depends on who is the channel for Christianity or Catholicism. But I think too much of it is still using fear, right? And my mother, my incredible human being, that's the person who taught me how to love, the depth of love that this woman had. And who knows, what in her mind, but her mind was already starting to go at the end. And there was a situation in which, I refer to it as helplessness encounters helplessness, because my sister, who used to live with her, who was her main caretaker, had to do something in the morning. So I went over to take care of, elder sitting. And so the room was kind of dark, and she called for my sister, and I showed up. And I think because she was still in that in-between state, she got confused, and she thought it was a man that was coming into her room. And she was sitting at the edge of her bed, and she was a hefty woman. If she would have fallen, it would have been difficult to get her back in bed. So I'm like trying to reach her to push her back under the bed. She's like fighting me. I know she doesn't see me. I know she's not seeing me, her son. But she's like helpless, being, feeling she's being attacked by a man. I'm helpless, trying to help her while she's fighting me. And at the very end, the last thing she was able to do is spit on my face. That's the only thing she was able to do to defend herself. And of course, I don't take that personally. I know she wasn't directing that at me, but it wasn't fun. But here's where I had the difficult time. And she goes up, she looks off to the side. And I don't know what she was seeing. Now I'm beginning to think that I wonder if she thought I was the Grim Reaper that was coming to take her. But she goes, no, I'm not a sinner. I'm not a sinner, and I'm not going to hell. I'm going to heaven. And which got me thinking afterwards, is like, what did my mother think that she could have ever done to think that she would go to hell? And that's where I think, to me, I've got to say it, that's particular expression of Christianity falls short when they're putting fear into people's souls like that.
Well, no offense, but I have no doubt your mother was a sinner. I mean, that's just we're in a fallen world. That's the Christian teaching. So I mean, but God loves her, and Christ died for her, and God had a plan for her, and everyone, the good guys are more powerful than the bad guys, and the good guys are doing everything possible to save each and every one of us. So it's called good news for a reason, right? Like, I mean, yes, we tend to be morbid and dark and morose, we Christians in this fallen world, but that's a weakness. That's not Christian strength. That's human weakness. Okay, so
Yeah.
like, I mean, I can relate to your mother because, well, I can't relate to her because she's probably a good person, but I can relate to her in terms of the end when you're approaching death, how those fears would creep in. I mean, I've got a lot of sin. I mean, and you can't tell me otherwise. Yeah, that's the thing. You could tell your mother otherwise, but you can't tell me otherwise because I could make your
Well,
toes
it depends.
curl.
It
You make your
depends.
toes curl.
It depends on what you mean by
Yeah,
sin, right? To
yeah,
me, to me, that's a whole very big conversation.
yeah.
And where I where I differ is, if you're asking me to believe in a God that is punitive, that it's a busybody, that's worried about, what I'm, how I express my love, to use that example, who's micromanaging people's lives, then I got to tell you, David, that I'm an atheist. I don't believe in that kind of deity. I don't believe in a punitive God that would create humanity to imperfect and then send them to hell and punish them for eternity because of their imperfection. That just doesn't make any sense to me. So that was one of the reasons that I just couldn't. I don't believe in hell, and I don't believe in a punitive God. I don't.
You must be a pretty happy-go-lucky guy then.
What I have found is inner
because
peace, and
you have nothing to worry
profound.
about. You have literally nothing to worry about. That's hilarious. I mean, you could
No,
literally
that's
kill
not
yourself.
how.
You could literally kill yourself, and you'd just be there'd be no punishment, right? Like, that's to take it to the extreme. Like, according to your worldview, you could kill yourself right now, and there would be no negative consequence, no eternal negative consequence, right?
I mean, you're taking it to an extreme that I don't
Yeah.
feel that is necessary to take.
Well, it's
Um,
necessary to examine ultimate reality to say, do our choices matter, yes or no? You know, because suicide is real. People are killing themselves right now, like as we speak.
And the
And
reason and the question is why, rather than focusing on is it a sin, is it painful, is it punishment?
well,
I would focus on
is it a
why,
good
which
if you could convince me that it was okay to commit suicide, I would just go off and commit suicide right away, because that's, this world is a trial. This world is painful. This life is not easy. It's not fun for me. I don't know about for you. But
this
so like
world
if
isn't.
suicide's an option, then great. Like I would just tell everyone to do it and then do it myself. But I don't think it is an
Dude,
option.
but
I
see,
don't think it is an
but
option.
my approach is completely different. My approach is working with people so that they don't feel the need
But
to
what's the
commit
point? But
suicide.
what's the point? If there's only God and there's only heaven and there's only a happy ending for everybody, why suffer through this misery? Why? I don't understand.
Well, for one thing, I don't feel this life as misery. I feel it's very challenging, can be incredibly difficult, and it's also heaven on earth. So a lot of that is how we approach life. And there's ecstasy and there's bliss and there's horrible things that happen in the world to good people. And how do we balance all of that? What I have come to, what the place that I have come to in my life, which is a place of profound self-acceptance and profound self-love, and for over 30 years of working with people to help them get to that same place of freedom from all different religions and walks of life. My work is like I said, is spiritual, and helps people connect with our essence, who we really are. And for me personally, to use fear as a mechanism, like, I'm glad that that's not my tool to help people get free and get better. I don't see that as an incentive.
Yeah,
For me, what I use as incentive is freedom, personal acceptance, personal empowerment, and a deep, profound relationship with the divine.
but ultimately there has to be meaning. There has to be meaning to the suffering, because there is suffering. You can't deny the suffering. You can try to minimize it. You could try to minimize it, but you
I
can't
don't
deny it.
minimize it.
You can't.
I don't minimize it at all.
Well, you could try to avoid it. Yeah, I mean, we
I don't
we
avoid it either.
we like pleasure and we don't like displeasure or discomfort or boredom or pain and suffering and illness and death. And I mean, this is something that's part of our life in this fallen world. So we need to have meaning for the darkness, whatever you want to categorize as the dark stuff. And you put fear, clearly you put fear in the dark category, because you don't seem to like fear too much. But fear is the beginning of wisdom. It's fear of God is the beginning of wisdom, but it's only the beginning, and perfect love casts out fear. So the idea is not to remain in fear. The idea is to grow in love, and then to be to be free from that childish spirituality that relies and depends on fear, right? So that's my perspective as a Christian. So I just want to share that.
Yeah, well, what I wanted to say is that I don't deny the dark side at all. In fact, my work is about going into the dark side, the challenges, the fears, all the misunderstandings from childhood, the wounds, the traumas. I work with deeply hurt people, people who have been raped and victims of sexual abuse and violence, and they get healed. And so I'm not one. There's, I don't know if you know the concept of namaste, which from Hinduism, which is basically saying the sacred in me, the God in me, the love in me, the highest and best in me sees and acknowledges and bows to that in you. And I have a saying that says you can't namaste the shadow away, because there are some philosophies or some, I think, misunderstandings that everything is love and light. And so people that are trying to just jump over, it's called spiritual bypassing. Jump over the pain, and I just want to be in bliss all the time. And yes, everything is love and light. And what I say, the way that I live is not that. Is like, you've got to be willing. You've got to have the courage to go into the pain and the suffering, not to get stuck in it, not to ruminate in it, but so that you can heal and free from it, and so that you can step into your potential as a magnificent human being that we are.
Yeah, absolutely. I just want to give a shout out to my friend Altoid PA, who's in the live chat here. He's often in the live chat as I interview my guests, and we are live, so that's fun. But yeah, thanks for sharing that. I often ask my uh, first of all, do you identify as New Age? Is that like offensive to you, or is that a good fit for you that you're New Age?
I don't
You don't.
resonate with that.
Okay.
I don't limit myself in any way
Well, the New
in
Age is not
terms of.
limited. The New Age is very broad. It's a very broad tent. But I was New Age before. That's why I recognize it in you. But do you happen to believe in reincarnation by any chance?
I do believe in
Yeah,
reincarnation,
yeah.
and I think you know that it was in the Bible up until the year 400 that it was officially part of the Bible, and then it was taken out, as so many other things were taken out and put in.
I don't buy that. But yeah, so when it comes to, when it comes to your lives, plural, as Christians, we're not allowed to believe in reincarnation, and it doesn't really make much sense anyway, unless, unless you think that ultimately that separation is illusion, and the ultimate reality is just that there's one being, one God, as the Buddhists think, and as the Hindus think. And so, I mean, yeah, if you're a monist, then it makes sense, because reincarnation is just part of the story, part of the illusion of separation. But if you're a monotheist, it doesn't make any sense. So would you be happy to admit
Well,
that you are a
well,
monist? Do you believe there's only the one reality, the one ultimate reality?
I think there is one God, for lack of another word. I know that's a word that's very charged for a lot of people. One
Supreme being.
energy, supreme being, whatever you want to call it, that manifests itself in many different ways.
Do you believe
So,
that? Yeah, go ahead.
so like say Hinduism that is sometimes misunderstood as being polytheistic. The more technical term is henotheistic, which is that is one being, one entity that reveals itself in many different ways. And to me, that part makes a lot more sense. And when you're saying that reincarnation doesn't make any sense, to me, it makes a lot of sense. It makes more sense that we are evolving beings, and for me, that concept is not mutually exclusive from anything having to do with monotheism or anything like that.
Yeah, for the record, I don't believe in evolution either. So I believe in special creation, and I believe that we're devolving, as a human species. So
Yeah,
not
yeah. So
evolving, not evolving.
we're approaching this from very different perspectives.
Almost an
Mhm.
inversion of each other. But yeah, I
Mhm.
mean, this is not, this is far from the first discussion I've had with someone that's in the New Age, someone that's Hindu, Buddhist, or a monist of whatever kind. But so are you happy labeling yourself as a monist, that there's just that one?
I don't need a label, David. I don't
But
I don't need to
do you
label
accept,
myself.
or
That's part
yeah,
of what
reject the label,
that's part of my
reject the label,
experience.
reject the label. But when it comes to non-duality, for example, are you committed to non-duality?
What I perceive myself as, or the place that I've gotten to, is beyond any definition. Like beyond, I appreciate a lot of different things about different religions.
Yeah.
Like in terms of learning about the mind and freeing ourselves from the prison of the mind, Buddhism is incredible for that. Some of the practices that don't require that you believe in anything. The Buddhists aren't really theists in that way. Um,
They're
but their
monists.
technology for freeing for developing the potential of what it means to be human is incredible. I love the passion of the Hindus. I love the creativity of Hinduism. I love the sense of culture of Judaism. I love from the indigenous traditions. I love how connected they are to it all. Like the indigenous don't have this separation that we have in the West, and which has now imbued all of the world, the separation between the physical and the spiritual, which is part of the reason that we have such suffering. Because from my understanding, my experience, like it's all part of the same. We're all part of the same creation. And if we're going to claim that God is omnipresent, then don't tell me that God is everywhere except for the bedroom and the genitals. Don't tell me that, right? It's either everywhere or it's not.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, my friend Jay showed up, Canadian Anglican. So nice to see you, Jay. Um, so yeah, I just want to know, because like, I mean, you may be uncomfortable when I keep pressing you on this, but that's just what I do. It's just what I do. So don't feel like I'm singling you out. I do this to all my guests.
No,
But
I know, and I am completely free to respond to it
of
however feels
course,
right to
of
me. I don't.
course, of
I'm a
course, of
choice.
course. Yeah, I'm not censoring you. I'm not condoning. I'm not condemning your answers either. That's why I invite people on, is to get their perspective, right? But when it comes to like sort of the grand narrative, there's a Christian grand narrative. There's God Almighty, and He's a Trinity, and He created a perfect Garden of Eden and put Adam and Eve there. He created Adam from the dust, and He created Eve from Adam's side while he slept, and then you know, the whole creation story, and then there's the fall, and then there's the the messy, sinful, fallen world, and then God sends His only begotten Son, the second person of the Godhead, to come and to bring the good news that that we could be redeemed from our fall. And then at the end of time, Jesus comes again, and that's the end. So we have the beginning, the middle, and the end. And it's like you don't have that, right? You don't have that story. What is your story?
Well, I mean, let me tell you that that story is not unique to Christianity.
But what's your story? That's what I'm asking. What's your grand
I,
narrative?
I believe that there is this great intelligence that is this creative force that does not exclude evolution. To me, the evolution can very much be part of a story of creation. It makes sense to me that it's not an either or thing, and that there's sacred intelligence that imbues all of life, including ourselves. And that's what I love about some of those religions, like Hinduism. Like if we can begin to own the sacredness in us instead of externalizing it, that's what we have. The problems that we have is because we have externalized the sacred. How much further could we have placed heaven away from us? We have completely separated ourselves from the sacred, and then anything that's of the physical, we have turned it into something that's less than, something to be conquered, subjugated, controlled. So no wonder we have the relationship that we have with the world, which is one of control and rape and pillage the earth. And that's the way that what we have. That's the reason we have so much relationships problems. Because the human body, we have animalized it, and then sexuality, forget it, we demonized it. So no wonder we're going to have sexual issues as a species. And what's tragic about that for me is that before the patriarchal times, before the patriarchal cultures and religions, that separation, that split between the sacred and the physical, between the physical and the spiritual, wasn't there. In many of the Eastern traditions were considered not only a path to the sexuality was not only not sinful, but it was considered a valid path to reunion, to coming back together with God. And in those indigenous traditions, they don't have that split either. To them, everything is sacred, including the rocks and the clouds and the rivers and the creepy crawlies and the earth. Everything is sacred, including the body, including the genitals. And to me, that is such a healthy way to live.
Okay. So let me give you an example of how I would expect you to answer my simple question, which is to give you the grand narrative. So here's an example of how you could answer, and then you can correct me if I'm wrong. So there's God, and then He manifests in all kinds of finite, fallible creatures like you and I, and the plants and the trees and the birds and the bees. And then at the end, it all goes back to God, and He is perfectly happy. And it was just a crazy story, a crazy adventure of God discovering things through this finite world and this creation. That's like from the beginning to the end of your worldview. Does that make sense, or would you tweak and modify that story?
Maybe. I don't know. I don't think any one of us can possibly know what this whole purpose of this vast cosmic experience is. I think it's beyond our ability to understand. Could I say yes to that? I said, yeah, I could see that. I could see that, but do I know that's the way it is? I don't.
Yeah, but
I don't.
there's some things that you do claim to know. You do claim to know that none of us is separate from God, and none of us can be permanently separated from God, right? Correct? Correct?
I do, and that's from experience. That is my relationship to the sacred.
Yeah. So
It's not something that I read in a book.
if you believe that, if you're committed to that belief, that has a lot of implications which you can tease out. It's not too hard to tease them out. The implications. The implications are, for one thing, there's no morality. There is no morality. You could do whatever you want to do. because it doesn't matter, because you are God. You're just God having an experience as Christian right now, and I'm God having an experience as David, and we're having this conversation. But it's just God talking to himself, right? So there's no morality. There's only the theater of morality. There's only the illusion of morality, just as there's only the illusion of separation, right? So you agree with that?
No, no, not necessarily. I think
Where
you're
would
making a
where would
you're
you
making you're making a jump there about morality, which is a very interesting thing, because to me the morality is a very different, it's a very basic way of looking at morality. To me, they're like there's an evolution of morality too, right? The way that we think about what's right and what's wrong. Because if you're going to ask me, am I going to base myself what I think is right and wrong on something that was written thousands of years ago, translated, retranslated, mistranslated, translated again, stuff taken out, stuff put in, and stuff that was decided when women weren't even human, when women were property? Am I going to base my choices about what's right and what's wrong on that? Sorry, no.
No, because you're
So if
Catholic.
not,
Catholics don't do that. Catholics don't do
if
that.
well,
Maybe
but
the
Catholics are
Protestants,
rule.
maybe some Protestants do that because they're Bible alone. But we're not a Bible alone faith. We have a living
But but
magisterium. We
but
have Christ and His church are
but
one,
the
and Christ is alive, and the church is alive, and we have a living magisterium. So anyway,
but
sorry
then
for my
but
rant.
then but why the need for hell and fear, hell and damnation? And if you don't do this, then you're going to be punished, right? That's the morality.
Yeah, well,
You're going to do something, do or not do something because of fear of punishment. To me, that's the most basic level of morality. So I'm not going to cheat on my wife or my husband because I might end up getting divorced. Or I'm not going to kill somebody or steal from them because I might going to go to hell.
yeah,
Right? To me, that's the most basic level of morality.
yeah,
Then you can say there's the next level might be karma, right?
yeah,
Where if you have that belief that what goes around comes around,
yeah,
then all right, then I'm not going to do that. I'm only going to do good things because that's what I want to come back to me. It's a
yeah,
little higher level of
yeah,
morality, but it's still kind of a little basic. To me, the highest level of morality is what we're talking about, is what I call the namaste level of consciousness. If I see the goodness in you, the sacred in you, the God in you, whatever word you want to put in there, how can I possibly steal from you or invade your country or rape you?
because
Right?
because
To me,
it's
that's the highest level of morality, and it has nothing to do with punishment.
yeah. But when it comes down to morality, really what it's all about is freedom. We have the freedom to choose, and with that freedom comes the necessary corollary that freedom is subject to abuse, right? So you can use it or you can abuse it, right? So when opportunity arises to be selfish, and it happens all day every day, when that opportunity arises, it's easier just to cave into the selfishness than it is to have recourse to some principles and to the higher love and all these sorts of things, which you and I agree on, right? We agree on the higher principles. But what you seem to be in denial of is how easy and convenient it is to just be human and to be lazy in this fallen condition that we have, where we
No,
tend towards evil. We tend towards evil. So we have to struggle against that.
no.
It's not easy to be virtuous. If it were easy to be virtuous, everyone would be virtuous, but they're not, right?
It's nothing less than heroic. But please don't put thoughts and words in my mouth,
Yeah,
because I don't deny that. I don't say that life is easy.
yeah,
In fact, I say that what I'm talking about, the way that I live, is nothing short of heroic. To
Ooh.
cheat, to lie, anybody can do that. To react when somebody
Yeah,
says something to us and hurt them back because you hurt me, anybody can do that.
yeah,
To have the courage, the presence to, like, ouch, that hurt, be willing to do the work. Why did that hurt me? What was my role in it? Why do I seem to get caught in these patterns of behavior? That kind of level of existing is what makes freedom possible, so that we stop attracting that kind of reaction, and so that we stop hurting other people and hurting each other. And to me, that is nothing short of heroic. I'm not jumping the shadow stuff. I'm not idealizing humanity. I know we're all capable of doing good and doing stuff that's not good and doing horrible things to each other. I see that all the time in the people that I work with.
but my question, at the heart of everything I've been saying to you this whole conversation, at the heart of it is morality, choices, and why does it matter? Why do our choices matter? So what I like to boil it down to with a lot of my Hindu and Buddhist and New Age guests is a sort of a thought experiment about someone that comes to you as, you know, a wise mentor and says, hey, look, I've figured out how to get a lot of pleasure at everyone else's expense, but no one in my community knows really that I'm on the dark path, and they're celebrating me, holding me up like a pillar of the community. I've got money, I've got power, I've got women, I've got everything that I could want, and I've got it figured out, and it's all at the expense of innocent victims, right? It's like it's a very satanic uh, lifestyle, but I've got it figured out, and because I'm God, you know, it doesn't really matter. This is just playtime for me. It's just playtime for me. But I figured out how to have a lot of pleasure. So what could you possibly say to this young man who figured out how to get a lot of pleasure at everyone's expense and maintain his reputation and the money and everything else? What would you say to him?
That in my book, that is not, that it has nothing to do with God. Nothing to do with God.
Well, have you never met someone who's inclined towards evil, and that is, you know, have you not at least read about people who dive into the dark side?
Of course, and that's what I'm saying. That has nothing to do with God.
Yeah, but this person, according to you, is God. It's just a fragment of God or a spark of God or whatever, experiencing something, and this person chooses to experience the dark
Yes,
path.
because
What could you say?
free.
Yeah, because
There is free will.
what would you say
There
to
is
this
free
person?
will. There is free will, and humans turn away from the light.
So what would you
That's part
say?
of the.
What would you say to this person, this young man who came to you and admitted to you that that he's on the dark path on purpose? What would you say?
I would feel compassion for him,
Any advice to
and
him? Any advice to
somebody
him?
who,
Any advice to him? If he asks you for advice, hey, what's your advice?
well,
Good
I
luck,
mean,
have
to
fun.
say what?
Good luck, have fun, go for it. Is that the sort of advice
Yeah,
you would give, or
depends on
he's
I mean,
hurting
you're
people?
asking
Like
us.
he's hurting people. He's hurting people.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
depends on like if he's coming to me like genuinely is one thing. Like, hey, I'm doing this behavior. I don't like it. I
he
know that
likes
I'm
it. He
hurting
likes it.
people.
He likes it.
Then there's not much I can do with that.
Okay.
Knock yourself out.
Okay.
The life is gonna come get you. Karma cop is gonna get you at some point. I know you're not happy. I
Okay.
know for sure. I know
Okay.
you're not fulfilled. I know you're not happy.
Okay. That's what you'd say.
I know that.
Okay, that's a good answer. That's a good answer. So the thing that I always run up to against all of you monists, if you don't mind me labeling you temporarily,
Yeah,
tentatively as
please
a
no, don't
monist.
please don't label me. Don't limit me.
Okay, not
I
you,
think
but
don't limit me.
every other monist, not you, but every other monist, when when it boils down to,
But
is that,
why do you find such a need to label things and to label people? We're trying to put labels and names on what is ultimately
well, I could
undefinable.
no, but you think that there's only one being, right? You think ultimately there's only one being, which is manifesting itself in
But
different
who
ways.
cares?
So
Who
this is
cares,
there's a shorter way of saying all that, which is to just say that's monism.
But
It's
you're
just a
getting caught
shortcut. It's
in
just a shortcut.
but you're getting caught in like ways of defining what is ultimately undefinable. Like who cares? Like why waste time trying to define what is so vast and so huge that we can't even begin to grasp? Monist, polytheistic,
Yeah.
who cares? Open your heart, become
Yeah.
the best human being that you can be.
Yeah.
Learn how to love yourself, make a difference in the world, love people, help people get better and free themselves, make a difference in the world. That's all you need to worry about.
Yeah. So there's this, I don't know if you know, but I used to be a Satanist, and one of the maxims of Satanism is do what thou wilt, right? Do what thou wilt.
I knew you were an atheist, but I didn't know about the Satanist
Yeah.
part of it.
So do what thou wilt, and that was borrowed from Saint Augustine, who said, "Love God and do what thou wilt." So Aleister Crowley just chopped off the love God part and just said, "Do what thou wilt." So you know, there's this idea of the will, like we can choose, and we could choose our path, and like you said, you choose to go towards the light, and this guy in my thought experiment chose to go towards the darkness, and you feel limited in how you could influence this young man in my example, but you also you did, when I pressed you, you did give him a warning, like it's not going to end well for you, and I know you're not happy. So I'm glad I pressed you because he came up with a good answer there. But yeah, I forget where I was going with this, but yeah, Satanism and do what thou wilt and these sorts of things. It's like you know, as God, as God, it's inevitable that I'm gonna do what I will, right? Like this really is what Satanism is all about, claiming the God, claiming the name of God. I am I have that sacred divinity, and ultimately nothing can harm me because I'm God. That's my problem with the Buddhist worldview, the Hindu worldview, the New Age worldview, and your worldview.
But
you
what's
know,
missing with that, David? What's missing is that you're having a misunderstanding of what that means. The the way that I feel about that is comes with such profound humility, like face on the floor, full prostration humility, that the divine intelligence shows up through and has an active life in my personal life, in this tiny little being's life. It is nothing less than humbling. So it's the opposite of the arrogance that you're pointing to, which is what's been attributed to the dark side, right? It's like, oh, I'm God and I'm going to take the place of God. That's not what I'm talking about. And so the way that I feel about that is not so much that I'm God, is but that I am in God, that is everything, and God is in me. That's what that means to me. It doesn't mean that I'm like this all powerful, tyrannical, abusive, arrogant being, because that's not my experience of God either. And there's a funny story about Ram Dass, who was a psychologist in Harvard, who then did some experimentation with LSD, I think it was, mind expanding substances, and then eventually found his way to a Hindu path. And his brother was in a psychiatric hospital. And the story goes that the brother asked him, why is it that when you claim you're God, you're offered book contracts and people throw money at you, and you have houses all over the world, that people just offer you where you can go. And when I claim I'm God, I get put away in a psychiatric hospital. And Ram Dass said to him, well, the thing is, I never claimed to be the only one.
uh-huh. Yeah. But do you sincerely believe that you and I are two separate beings, or no?
I think, I think we're all a manifestation of that, that original creatrix. And I think we are, there's more argument for our commonality than for our differences. Like if you look at our DNA, David, it's more than 99.999% the same. And even if with other races, our DNA is more than 99.9999% the same. Our DNA, we share 98.4 of our DNA with chimps.
Yeah.
We share 50% of our DNA with bananas.
Yeah.
So when we talk about a commonality of a human family, like we can't even talk about different races. There's not enough variation to be considered a different race. And when we talk about the breath, which is part of what I do, I use the breath as a healing technology, as healing practice. There's an element in the breath there's a chemical, and an element. One of the elements is called argon, which is immutable. So unlike oxygen, that when we breathe it in, we expel it as carbon dioxide. When we breathe in argon, we expel it as that exact, identical, unchanged, immutable argon, which means that the same argon that's going through your lungs and my lungs right now is the same argon that went through the lungs of the pterodactyl and the woolly mammoth and the saber-toothed tiger. The same argon that went through the lungs of the Buddha and Lao Tzu and Confucius and the Christ and the Mother Mary and the Magdalene and all those prophets and the greatest artists and the greatest scientific minds throughout history. So I do believe that we share a lot. And then at the same time, we also have this individuated personality.
Yeah.
So I think it's a both and rather than either or.
But, there's a saying going around, I don't know if you've heard it, but separation is illusion. Do you buy into that saying or no?
I think ultimately it's true. I think it's ultimately the fact that we feel separate from God. I think that's illusion.
Yeah. That's my point, right? That's my point. That's why I call you, whether you like it or not, I call you a monist. That's why. Okay. So it's no offense intended. I love I love monism. I love it. I love it. And in
No
a certain
offense
sense,
taken, but for me, it's
in
like
a
to me,
certain
like if
in a certain sense, it's true. So I'm not throwing aspersions at you, my friend. I want to give a shout out to my friend Phil Gonzalez. He's in the live chat. He asked a very
yeah.
important question. He says all
But
soup.
wait,
He
let
says
me
all
respond to
soup.
what you
He
just.
says all soup is soup. Why put different labels on them? That's a very serious question. I like an answer.
Let me respond to what you said before,
Okay.
because for me, like you seem to be so, for you, defining people and how they believe seems to be
But can
in
I
what
do what I
different.
want to do? Can I do what I want to
Of
do?
course you
Of
can,
course I
but to
can.
me, but of course you can.
Yeah.
But don't put that on me. Don't limit me. To me, that's mental
Do you have
masturbation.
any
You're
do you
this,
have
you're
any
that.
labels? Do you have any labels that you're comfortable putting on me?
Why would I
Man,
want to do that? Why would I want to do that?
human, man,
Human, yeah, for sure.
David,
For sure.
Canadian,
For sure,
Catholic. Yeah, lots of labels, right? So
but those are
monotheist.
your labels for yourself.
I
I don't
love
put
them.
those
I
on
love
you.
them. I love them. I accept reality as it is. I love that
Good for you.
there are
Good
you.
for you.
I love the fact that there are labels. So back to the soup thing. All soup is soup. Why put different labels on them? I think it's a good question.
And what is, I'm not sure what he's referring to by soup
Soup,
is soup.
soup. You go to the grocery store and you're picking out a
Yeah,
soup,
I
and
know, I
your wife
understand
tell
what that means, but what is he talking about metaphorically?
well, because you said you don't want labels. What's the point of labels? Well, labels are very useful. That's the point. That's the point my friend's making, right? Labels are very useful. So your wife sends you to the store to buy mushroom soup. You come back with tomato soup, and you're gonna get a smack in the head
Mhm.
because you
Yeah,
didn't pay attention to labels. Like you got to pay attention to labels, right? It's like it's very, 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 very important. Very important. It's like one of the first things we teach children is to read
yeah.
labels.
And if you start using those labels as separation, that's why we end up in war,
Yeah,
right?
but
I've got the one and only truth, and you're a heathen, and so I'm gonna go invade your country and kill you.
yeah, for the record,
And to me, there's a lot of arrogance in that.
I'm against arrogance. I'm against war. I'm against all the evils that you're against. But I'm not against labeling. I'm not against labeling. I mean, if you don't want to be labeled, I won't label you. But behind your back, I'm going to be labeling you. You are a man.
Knock yourself out.
You're a
Knock
Cuban. You're
yourself
whatever.
out.
It's like. So like, if your ears are burning, it's because I'm labeling you. Behind your back. Just don't worry about it so much. Don't. I hope you don't lay awake at night worrying that people are
Uh,
labeling you, because I can guarantee you that I'm not
I
the only one
don't,
labeling you.
David.
I'm not the only one labeling you. I can
David,
guarantee you that. I can guarantee
I
you that.
sleep so well at night. No matter what you think of me, it's not gonna have any impact on my ability to sleep.
just
I,
because
s-
I,
I
just because I label you doesn't mean I don't like you. I label everybody. That's what
Well, go for it.
that's what we do.
Go
That's
for it.
that's what humans do. So anyway,
Go for it.
what about music genres? Do you like different music genres or
I like a lot of different
punk,
music.
disco, new
What was
age
the first one
music,
you said?
punk?
I like some punk, but I definitely had my disco phase and went dancing a lot and enjoyed that. These days, I listen more to more deeper spiritual,
Okay.
transformational music from all different walks of life and traditions. So anything that helps me connect, that helps me deepen.
How do you find that music?
Oh my God, I've got incredible music. 30 years of collecting music that I use in my retreats and my workshops. Um, it's the kind of thing that I think when you open up to it, it becomes this kind of a sacred dance. I think one of the things when we stop separating ourselves from life, from God, from the universe, from whatever you call it, um, and there's a great way to talk about that. There's a thing called the ego, this construct, and there's a lot of confusion about what the ego is in the world. Here's a super simple metaphor. You put a baseball in the center of a stadium. That's what the ego is. It's a part of who we are. It's the sense of self. This is Christian. That's David. Right. That illusion of separateness, which is helpful in some ways, and it's also the source of all our suffering. But what I'm talking about, which is more about this process of transformation rather than labeling anything spiritual, the process that I live and teach is more about when we realize that who we are is actually the stadium. and that we've allowed this tiny, tiny part of who we are to think that it is all of who we are, and to make choices, significant, important choices from its very small, limited, and always fear-based perspective. And to connect that concept of the ego to what you were talking about, the story of creation, Ken Wilber, who writes about this stuff and really understands the ego part of being human from a profound way, talks about how, because that Adam and Eve story is found all over the planet, not just in Christianity. It's different variations of that that's very common all over the world. And so what he talks about is that at some point human beings didn't have a sense of self, right? There's some theories that the higher primates, the elephants, the dolphins, and the whales have a sense of individual separate identity. We don't really know, right? But we've all seen the YouTube videos where you put a dog or a cat in front of a mirror and they interact with that image as if it was another dog or cat. They've done experiments where you put ash on the shoulder of a chimp, a gorilla, put them in front of a mirror. At some point, they'll do like this. They'll rub their shoulder, rub it off. So they realize that that's them in that image. But can we leap to having to having a sense of self? We don't know. We don't really know what's going on inside of their heads. So anyway, we know we have a sense of self, which is one of the reasons we're so successful, and also the reason we have so much suffering. Because if we identify as that separate identity, as that separate ego, now we can have isolation, we can be depressed, we can have abandonment issues, we can have a sense of our own mortality. So there's a lot of price that we pay for having that individual sense of self. Ken Wilber talks about how at some point humanity didn't have that. And when that ego develops in human beings, that's the point that we then mythologized as the expulsion from the garden, where everything was at one. We were in connection, we felt part and like we belonged with everything else. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. I don't know how that can ever be proven, that humanity didn't, there was a point in our collective evolution where we didn't have a sense of self. But if to me, it feels true. And that's the difference in when, when what I feel as you're so intent in labeling and trying to pigeonhole me into what's this and what's that. I don't have a very dogmatic approach to any of this. Like I come from a place of openness. Yes, and to me that's a problem. To me that's a problem. No matter what dogma it is, from what religion, for me that's limiting.
What about this one? You like this one?
Yeah, but how much of that is human? Like Christ didn't come to create a religion. He didn't come to that. And I know, because I have a connection with and a relationship with the Christ, I know that he would have nothing to do with much of what's being done in his name. To go to war in the name of God, to me, that's the abomination. To cause separation, to cause somebody fear at the end of the life, that's not godly. That's not godly.
Yeah, I got so many questions for it. Unfortunately, I only have like 10 minutes left. Maybe you'll come back and we'll chat again. I hope I didn't offend you with any of my labeling, but
I'm not offended at all.
hopefully you'll come back. Hopefully you'll come back and because I have a lot of questions. I have a lot of questions. But we're gonna end on something something light and something nice. But I just wanted to mention first, this thought that's been going through my head lately, because I talked to a couple of people who are Hindu and Buddhist and New Age. And it's the idea of all the world's a stage and we're actors on the stage, and we're just embodiments of God, and God's playing with this theater. And whatever you think about that analogy or whatever, it doesn't matter. But like, I've been thinking about it. And if you've ever done any theater, I don't know if you've done theater, but it's kind of taboo to break out a character on stage in the middle of a play with the audience is there, they pay good money. It's taboo to just break out a character and just say, hey, Bob, you're not Fred, you're Bob. You're not the King of England, you're Bob. And we're actors and we're on a stage and that's the audience and those are the lights and this is all contrived and whatever. It's like that's a faux pas. You don't do that. That's unprofessional. So it's the same thing with you. You don't want to break out a character and suddenly, reveal that you're the one true God, right? You want to keep the performance going, because that's what God wants. God wanted to do a show. He didn't want to break the show and break that fourth wall or whatever. So I was thinking about that. If you have any comments, now is the time, and then we'll move on to another subject before wrapping up.
Yeah, I mean, no, I don't.
No comment.
No comment on that.
You're
No,
gonna
I'm,
stay. You're gonna stay in character. This is amazing. Wow, it's like it's so amazing. I'm very proud of you. But I can't stay in character. I gotta break. I gotta break out and say, hey guys, this is all fake. Like I don't know if you know, but I was a hard solipsist before my conversion. Right before my
you
conversion,
are what?
hard solipsist. It's solipsism is the belief that I am God, and I'm the only being. Right. So it's not too far from where you're at. Of course, you've got all kinds of you've got an actual belief in the illusion. You've got you believe that you have hands and a body and other people around you and stuff like that. I didn't believe that, but for some reason you believe you buying into the this illusion that you are a material being, right? Whereas I didn't buy it. I was God. Okay, I wasn't, but I thought I was. So yeah, so that's because I've got a little bit of mental illness in my background, my family, so I'm prone to mental illness anyway, and I'm very sensitive and a little bit crazy, and
Hmm.
so I can go down very strange rabbit holes through studying philosophy, which is what took me to heart solipsism, or just tripping out on music or
Hmm.
movies or whatever. So I'm not saying
And by the
it's
way, I will jump in on this one.
yeah.
I would encourage you to even not label yourself in that way. To be mindful about labeling yourself mental illness.
Well, I mean,
I'm not saying that. I know that there's a lot going on with the brain that we don't understand. I study psychology.
yeah,
I know that there's a lot of unhealthy behavior and stuff that happens in the brain that is imbalanced.
yeah,
But and I also believe and know that we are overdiagnosing ourselves
yeah.
and over prescribing ourselves, and that a lot of the stuff that's being medicated could be healed with the type of work that I do
I agree with you.
without the need to
I
medicate.
agree with you. It's not a good idea to say I'm a loser, I'm crazy, I'm this and I'm that. I mean that is my habit, but I mean I agree with you. It's not good. It's not good. That is my habit, but part of that I attribute just to being Canadian and self-deprecation. But but
It's a human thing. It's a human. It's not a Canadian thing. It's a human experience.
uh,
And
yeah,
what I'm talking about is we can break free from that conditioning. That's what I'm talking about, and that we get to choose even our thoughts. Right? If we think about it, the brain's like a computer. Whatever you put into it, it's when it's what's that's what's going to come out on the other side. So
garbage in, garbage out.
I would become very mindful about your thoughts and be start paying attention to what it is that you're thinking.
Yeah, yeah. I'm yeah. The other thing is I don't take it that seriously because of my religion, right? Because of my religion, like my religion teaches me that I'm nothing, God is everything, and that I'm a miserable sinner and God's pure and holy. So I mean, built into my religion is sort of a reinforcement of some of the negative psychology that I have, and it's up to me to sort out, and maybe it makes it a little bit more complicated to sort out what's neurotic and psychotic stuff in me that's
Hmm.
not healthy, that's not like Christian, and then what just happens to correspond with the Christian teachings. But
Hmm.
anyway, it's just way too deep for us to get into 5 minutes away from wrapping
No,
up.
but let me just respond to that. Maybe that's the way it is. I
Yeah,
don't know. I don't. It does that doesn't resonate with me. The problem that I have with that is that we put off. Okay, well, heaven is coming, right?
hopefully.
And Jesus has saved me, and I don't have to do anything else because Jesus has saved me.
No,
And then we don't
that's
have
the
to.
Protestant way.
Then we stop growing. We stop becoming better human beings. We stop
Yeah,
fulfilling the unique human potential that is inside each one of us.
yeah.
That's the flood.
Yeah,
Whereas the way that I feel it is like right now could be heaven or it could be hell,
yeah.
depending on what's in here and what we're doing with that.
Yeah, the saints, if you read the lives of the saints, hey, my friend Pick and Choose is here, and my friend Christopher Rice is here. Risto, nice to see you, boys. It's all guys in the live chat, but anyway, the saints. If you look at the lives of the saints, and I don't know if you have, but they're
Yes, I
wonderful,
have.
wonderful, colorful people with a lot of creativity, a lot of life, a lot of joy, and you can't be a saint if you're not full of joy. I mean, there was a self-awareness, of their tendency to sin and that sort of stuff too, but there was a lot of joy. Sometimes they were stern, strict on themselves, and maybe on others too. I don't know, but that's not really the Christian way. The Christian way is to be stern and strict with ourselves, but not with others. We're supposed to lead by example and to be. I'm talking about the saints here. We're supposed to be like shining
Hmm.
lights of virtue, and the whole Christian walk
Hmm.
is not like once saved always saved for us Catholics. For us Catholics, it's like striving for virtue with God's help. Everything is grace, and we have to correspond with that grace and just keep working on it and striving for perfection, even though, as Christ said, that's what we have to do, but it's impossible for us. But for God, it's not impossible. So we have to, die to self, live unto Christ, and these sorts of things. There's a lot we could get into, and I do hope you come back
Yeah.
again. I've enjoyed meeting you. I've enjoyed talking with you. But at the end, at the end of my episodes, I just ask the guest to give a little closing thought, something positive, something that anyone could take away. Because what you might not know about my podcast is, I've got Catholics, but I've got Protestants, I've got atheists, I've got, as you know, New Age and Hindu and Buddhist, and I've got all kinds of listeners. So what's a sort of universal message that everyone could come away with a little bit of hope or something positive?
That no matter what happened to us in the past, and we've all gone through a lot of difficult, traumatic stuff, that no matter what happened, all that stuff can be healed and it can be overcome. And to me, what we're being called to do now, all of us, is to be the most that we can be. There isn't anybody out there who has the same genetics, the same set of experiences that make each one of us who we are. If we don't give expression to that fully, ain't nobody else going to do it. And to me, I hope that assuming that anybody sat through this conversation this long and asking this kind of questions knows that there isn't anything out there that's going to make us happy. Not enough sex, not enough money, not enough power, not enough possessions, not enough travel. None of that is ever going to be enough. And that to me, what fulfills us is to give expression and to make the most of the gifts and the talents and the magnificence that is inherent to each one of us.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think the Saints do that. Um, just a last little question, because it just came to me. We met on Podmatch, and I think it's amazing because I've met so many wonderful people. But I'm wondering, because we had sort of like some exciting chemistry there. I'm wondering if you've talked to other Christians that you met through Podmatch and what their reaction was to you, and just generally like what kind of people you've been meeting on Podmatch, and do you have your own podcast?
I don't have my own podcast. I have been interviewed by a couple of people, not the majority, but a handful of people who identified as Christians. In the way they promoted their podcast. And I got to tell you, David, yours is the one that has been the most. I mean, I really enjoy the conversation, and I like to be challenged because I don't come from a place of dogma. I don't think I have all the answers, and what freedom and what relief that is. But with you was the only one that I felt that there was that little bit of friction, and not in a bad way, friction. And I think to me that comes because you've got some very clear, defined ways about what it means to be Christian, whereas the other. So I think with the book you showed me about the dogma, that to me that's an expression of that. In the other 4 interviews or 5 that I've done, that dogma wasn't so strong.
Cool.
There was more fluidity, more openness to, maybe that's true. Maybe there's
Yeah.
a different way to look at it.
For the record, I did admit to you that I like your, at base, I like your. I was going to say monism, but I like your stuff. And I do believe in it, but it just needs to be put into a certain context or whatever. But we can talk. We'll talk more next time.
Yeah, but that's your need to put it into a certain context. I don't have the need to put it into a certain context.
Yeah. So anyway, thank you so much for taking the time, and I do love you, and I wish the best for you, and I hope you're gonna do whatever kind of send me good vibrations or whatever it is that you do. I pray for people, so I'll be praying for you.
Thank you.
Whether you like it or not, I'm pretty sure you like it though. So.
Of course I'll take prayers, and of course I'll take love, and I feel like I love you too. I don't know you, but
Oh, we've come a
I
long way,
love you,
baby.
and
We've come a long
I
way in
want the
this hour.
best for you. Well, What was that?
I say we've come a long way, baby. We've come a long way in this 1 hour.
Yeah.
Roller coaster. So a real joy to meet you, a real pleasure, and it's an open invitation. You just hit me up anytime, and we'll come. We'll chat some more. Okay.
Thank you.
God
Thanks
bless
for
you.
having me on the show.
And I
Many,
like your
many
name. I
blessings.
like your name, Christian. That's a cool name you got
Ah,
there.
there's a whole story behind that too,
Ah,
but
we'll talk about that
maybe
next
next
time.
time.
Okay, my brother. God bless you. Take
All
care.
right.
Bye bye.
Bless you.